Welcome to Building Business Credit Workshop by EBIA. Um, today's topic covered Lender Ready. This webinar is brought to you in partnership with EWDD, BusinessSource Pico-Union Westlake region operated by PACE Business Development Center. This webinar will be recorded and you may find it on our website e-library after a week or two. Just a little housekeeping before we get started. Please mute yourself during the webinar. If you have question, please use the chat room and then write your question or raising your hand emoji. Before we get to the topic of the day, I'd like to introduce PACE briefly. PACE was founded in 1976. We are a 501 nonprofit organization. Our PACE BDC provides many counseling service for local small business owners. We also provide free webinars and training. We have a various loan program, so you can apply your business. If you have any question, please feel free to visit our website, pacebdc.org, or give us a call. We have an upcoming webinar regularly. You can always check our website and register. Past webinar recordings, please visit our e-library. Our marketing team upload new video regularly, so please continue waiting if you don't see what you're looking for. Okay, now let's get started on today's webinar. Please welcome Valerie.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much, Irene and Pace, for your continued partnership and being able to still provide these resources to business owners. Today is actually a very, very important to your foundation of the business. So building business credit workshop, getting lender ready. So we're going to go through your roadmap from startup to six-figure credit lines. Now, why is it very important that you build business credit? Because if you do have business credit, what happens is you're able to obtain business credit to leverage it for your business. And I think all of you here could agree that it takes money to make money. So being able to position yourself to be able to get lender ready and ready for to continue your growth or even start up businesses, being able to get the funding that you need when you need it, especially going to traditional lenders. Now, today I know it is a rescheduled class, so it looks like we're having some participants still coming in. But I wanted to tell you a little bit about myself and why is it that I do what I do. So I actually came from a finance background. So I was in finance for over 20 years. And I was doing business banking for the last 15 to 16 years. And it was my passion to be able to help business owners grow, but not only with me, right? But then also them as entrepreneurs and business owners. So I've worked throughout different financial institutions and different departments, but my favorite one was business banking. Now, actually last year I went on my own, and the reason for that is I wanted to serve a bigger purpose to not just be able to help you provide solutions of what the bank has to offer, but actually be able to help you beyond as to what the banks have to offer. So sometimes you may go to the bank and they may not approve you. And some stats that I'm going to give you today that are related to today's workshop, you're going to take a look and see how many people are being able to get funded. But I think about it, there's a lot of the times at the bank that we don't even take the qualifications because we don't take the business owner because it doesn't fit in the box, meaning it doesn't fit the qualifications of the bank. And because of that, I want everybody here to know today that if this is it doesn't mean that you're not worthy to get lending. It just means that you're probably at the wrong lender. And then that's where we come in as far as Irene pays those type of resources to be able to guide you in the right direction to where to get funding. Now, after I left the bank, I created Evia. And Evia, we empower businesses to fund, innovate, and grow. So we do business consulting services, anywhere from startup to anywhere for middle market. We also help them with AI consulting and then digital marketing strategies, including your website and your logos. So that's what we do here. So if that's something that sounds like you need help with, please make sure to schedule a strategy session at the end. We'll have a QR code where you'll be able to schedule a call with our team. Now, what are we going to be talking about today? So, we're going to talk about why business credit changes everything, the business credit foundation, building and stock credit tiers, what lenders actually look for, your 90-day action plan. So, you'll be able to leave with some action items that you need to do to be able to get to the next steps to be able to build your business credit. And then, of course, at the end, usually the last 15 minutes, we go through Q&A. You'll be able to ask me any questions. But also, we don't have a very huge class today, which is also could be a benefit. So please feel free to use the chat box, or we also have a tool where you can ask questions. So I will try to address those as we go throughout the workshop. So why business credit changes everything? Now, here are some stats that are related to today's workshop. And one of the things that as I was navigating through these slides, I started thinking because these stats are from different resources, reliable resources, and so this is actual factual data, right? But what I want to tell you, as I mentioned earlier, and I can't emphasize it more, there was a lot of different times in where maybe the application wasn't taken because one, the business owner maybe got discouraged, or two, they were not meeting the criteria of the bank. So because of that, although we could still take the application, we do let them know, hey, here are some of the things that are going to improve your odds. And if you don't fit in that box, what happens is you need to go to another lender, which I feel a lot of business owners don't know this. And you are able to get lending anywhere from a startup business to a grown business. So if this is you, again, I want to make sure that you're reaching out to the right resources and don't let your business fail because you don't have the enough resources. Now, first stat is 45% of business owners don't know that they have a business credit score. And at the end of this workshop, you will receive a list of different resources and where you'll be able to get that information that's needed. 40% of business owners apply for financing using personal credit only, not business credit. So not only is this hurting your business credit because you're not reporting anything and everything is actually showing on your on your personal credit report. So what does this mean? When you go buy a home, when you go buy an investment property, a vehicle, and then you need to qualify for this, it should be under the business versus your personal credit. Also, when you're buying something personally, your debt that you have on the business should not be showing on the personal because then that'll reduce your odds to be able to get approved for your home or for an investment property. And then 24% of small businesses that apply for financing receive no funding at all. And again, this I feel like these numbers, might be a little bit different because as I mentioned, there's some people that don't even end up applying because they feel they're going to get approved, they're going to get denied, or they're not going to be able to get the funding that they need, or they just get discouraged maybe because of all the different documents maybe that the bank needs. Now, as far as the documentation, it's also very important that you're able to talk to your business banker or your consultant to be able to work directly with your CPA so that way you don't get overwhelmed with everything that needs to be provided to the bank. So, the business credit advantage, borrow without personal guarantee. So, as I mentioned, if you're going to go buy a house, an investment property, those numbers are not going to be inflated because they belong to the business. Keep business and personal finances separate. access funding even with low personal credit, build an asset that increases business value, and then, of course, qualify for vendor terms, lines of credit, and SBA loans, which we'll get into in just a moment. Now, the Business Credit Foundation, where does it all start? So you would need to have either an LLC, an S Corp is preferably that you don't have a sole proprietorship. When you do a sole proprietorship, talk to your accountant because there's a way that you could still get an EIN number. And that's actually at the beginning kind of where I started a few years ago, where the EIN number, because I wasn't maybe as busy. So that would be maybe that you want to start off just to kind of get your side business going. However, it is not recommended because if you are a sole proprietorship and you're using your Social Security, some of that information becomes public, especially when you're issuing 1099. So you don't want that information to be out there. So it's very highly recommended that you do an LLC or an S Corp, register it in your state or depending on what your accountant recommends, and then match all documents exactly, especially when you go to the bank or you go to a lender. If there's an address that doesn't match everything else, let's just say your statements and things like that, or your ID, or different things of that matter, it'll actually make it a little bit more difficult. Either one, extra verifications that you may need. So try to match everything exactly how it should be. Business addresses, not only does this give you a little bit more credibility, but it's also very important, especially when the bank or the lender is trying to see where you're operating out of. So physical or registered agent, no PO boxes for credit applications are usually accepted. So typically you'll have to use your home address and then use a UPS store or a virtual office. And you're able to get virtual offices where you could still use an address so that you can either one, go on Google Maps, or two, just be able to have an address on your website. Those are some of the things that the lenders will look for. And then typically you don't want to have your home address on there. EIN number. This is actually something that you can get for free at irs.gov. You will have that at the end of the course. It'll have some resources for you where you can go obtain one. Sometimes the convenience of maybe you go through LegalZoom or you go through some other company, then they will go ahead and do it on your behalf. So there's typically a charge for that. However, you are able to obtain one on your own. Apply for in your business name and then never use your Social Security for credit applications. Let me clarify when it says that though, because I don't want you to go to the bank and say, whoa, I'm not going to provide my Social Security number. They will still need that information, but what we're trying to say on here is when you're running your credit application, they're going to run typically your business credit and your personal credit, especially if you're still considered a small business, which different banks and different lenders will let you know what that capacity is. So whether that's 50 million and less, 10 million and less, but there are some lenders out there that will only take your EIN number versus both information. So just make sure you're checking with your lender. So it is customary for them to still take that information. However, don't be alarmed if they're asking for your social security number. And then you always want to check with the lender you're using to make sure that they're going to be reporting to the credit bureaus. So there are some credit cards out there and that they do not report to credit bureaus. So if you're not sure when you're going through that lender, just make sure that one, you talk to your banker. Hey, are you going to report to this credit bureaus? Or are you only going to report the bad? There are some that only report the bad versus the good and bad, and you want to have a relationship with the lender that's going to do both for you. DUNS number, again, we will have that at the end of the course where you can obtain one. A lot of the banks where you actually obtain a credit card that kind of comes along with it already. So check with your bank. It takes up to 30 days and requires most vendors. It's required for most vendor accounts. So if you have a supplier or a vendor that you use for maybe you have inventory or some type of service, they will typically asked for a DUNS number for you to be able to get credit or a line of credit with them. And we're going to talk about how to start establishing in those tiers in just a moment. So just, make sure you keep an eye out for that. Business phone number. So funny, it says listed on 411 directory, or if it matches all across all the filings and also on your website. Business bank account number, separate from personal. I cannot stress this so much, especially if you're going through some sort of audit or something with the IRS, then they will go ahead and take a look at your business accounts. And if those expenses are not there, they're really hard to justify, especially if you don't have the receipts for that. Minimum 3 months open and then show financial legitimacy. Now, business credit bureaus, there's four different ones that are going to be having eyes on the business credit score. The biggest one is going to be done in Bradstreet. This is also called Paydex score. So the way that these are measured is anywhere from 0 to 100 to 100 or 80 plus equals excellent. So anything below 80 is going to be considered not up to the not excellent, right? So it says most widely used by lenders and vendors. Paydex measures payment history. 80 equals pays on time, 100 equals pays early. If you are able to pay early, and we're going to go through some call to actions of how to boost up your credit score if you haven't already done that. But if you are able to pay early on your credit, on your all your credit cards, it actually boosts up your your credit scores even more. Not only on the business side, but on the personal side as well. Experian, this is another one that's used pretty widely, or it's also called inner little score plus, and this is anywhere from 1 to 100, so 76 and above equals low risk. So as you can see, it's a little bit different than done in Bradstreet. And me working at the banks in the past, this would be also another one that we use. And depending on what type of credit application, let's just say you're doing a business auto loan or you're doing an SBA loan, they may use different ones, and sometimes they don't tell you which one they'll be using. So that's why you want to have a good standing on all of them. Again, this is used by banks and credit card issuers. Factors include payment history, company size, and industry risk. So it's a little bit more, as you can see, that it gives you a little bit more information as far as your industry, not just your payment history like Dun& Bradstreet does. Equifax Business, this is a business credit risk. The higher, the better, and these scores go anywhere from 101 to 992. And this is focuses on delinquency, risk, and payment trends used by equipment lenders and commercial creditors. As I mentioned earlier, it does sometimes lenders or certain vendors will only report the bad, but not the good. And the reason they do that is because it does cost a little bit more money to be able to report all the good and the bad. And so in order to protect them and other relationships, they end up just reporting the bad. So as I mentioned, you want to make sure your vendor, supplier, or your creditor, bank as well, is going to be reporting both the good and bad. And then we have NAP Business, which aggregates all three bureaus. Great for it's a free tool to monitor your business and profile in one place. And as you can see, it's an A to F grading, F being the worst, A, of course, being great. Building and stacking credit tiers. So tier one would be your starter. However, I always recommend that if you have a business account or your personal account at a bank already, you always want to try to get a business credit card right off the bat because typically the banks, especially if you have a relationship with them, you have a 401k, maybe you have your mortgage with them, that is all positive things in a relationship. So I always tell my clients, always look at all your lenders, your creditors, your suppliers, your vendors as relationships that you have. Just like any relationship, right? You want all the positive feedback to go to them. So that way people start, or sorry, not people, but just the different creditors will be able to want to extend credit because it'll report the good on there. And so they're like, okay, this is a good credit profile. Let's go ahead and extend some credit, even if maybe you don't have all of these things already in place. Okay, so that's something that I wanted to throw out there as a banker, what I've seen in the past, especially with working with big financial institutions, they might be able to give you that ability to get credit without having these things in place. Now, what is going to be your starter? This is going to be your vendors and your suppliers. This is no personal guarantee. So typically they go heavily based on your business. And the goal is to open anywhere from 3 to 5 accounts that are reporting and always ask them if they would report to Dun& and Bradstreet because this will get you going in the first 30 to 90 days. So office supplies such as quill, O-line, and Granger, those are all office suppliers that you might be able to use. So that way you could start building some business credit. Very important because I've seen this as a lender getting declined, okay? You go into your vendor, you go into your suppliers, you're like, they're Valerie, they give me cookies and they're the most nicest people, employees in the world. And, we even chatted up for a little bit. And I don't understand why they've been reporting me to the credit bureaus for not paying on time. So make sure that you're taking a look at what their payment terms. So typically is net 30. So this means that they would require payment in about 30 days. Again, if you're able to pay earlier and they are reported to Dun& and Bradstreet, this will boost up your business credit report fairly quickly. Tier 2 is going to be your retail and your fleet credit cards. So try to get one with business for Amazon using your EIN number, Staples. These are all store credits that you're able to use. There's also fleet, or when it comes to fuel cards, where you use your EIN number and your business to be able to obtain these credit cards. So this could be an example of Shell, BP, WEX, or which would be the fuel cards. Requires tier 1 history typically, and sometimes they will also do the personal credit score as well. So the goal is to have 3 to 5 of those that are reporting. And then tier 3 is business credit cards. So this would be your Visa, MasterCard, American Express, those higher limits the higher limits credit cards. So sometimes you're able to get a credit card and where it could be $1 million, maybe even $100,000, depending on where you are or your business. So the goal is to obtain anywhere at the beginning, anywhere from 10,000 to 50,000. So that way you start establishing credit. What I always tell my clients is, yes, let's go ahead and switch your credit card if it's going to be maybe a better rewards, or if they're telling you, you know what, if you apply for a whole new credit card, we're going to give you a bigger line of credit. See if you can consolidate those credit cards together to have one big one. And always remember the credit utilization. So you have a bigger credit line and you're only using 30% of that. Let's just say that it's 100,000 and you're only using 30% of that, then you're using 30,000 and then you're not leveraging that 70,000. That looks good on your credit score. Tier 4, cash and line of credit financing. So these would be your SBA loans, bank line of credits. These are usually revenue-based financing, but then also seeing your profit as well. Also, know that SBA does do startup loans. So you may even start establishing credit right from the beginning if you go to the right lender for your startup costs of your businesses. As I mentioned earlier, it takes money to make money. So if you are able to obtain a loan as a startup, I would highly recommend that so that you can get your marketing, your website, your emails, your IT, everything all set up at the beginning. Make sure that you have the right budget for insurance. So this would be recommended at tier 4, typically 12 months or more. This is more of tiering, right? As far as being able to build and stacking credit tiers. However, do not be discouraged to always explore what you can do as a startup or even if you're not at the 12-month mark. All right, so tier 1 starter vendors for your first accounts. What are they wanting to see? They want to see your 40% payment history, so your track record of being able to pay on time or early. Late payments devastate your paydex score, so this can mess up your credit score by 40%. If you see here, credit utilization, 25%. So as I mentioned earlier, try to keep your credit limits below 30%. So that way your scoring could be ideal. Also, your account age is 15%. As you can see, still the payment history is very, very important. So make sure that you're always paying the minimum payment and have some sort of relationship with your vendors or suppliers of saying, hey, Is there a way that maybe you can't report it or give me a little bit more time? Or even try to, excuse me, negotiate better terms. So instead of paying them in 30 days, maybe paying them in 45 days, but just make sure that you have that open communication with the relationships that you have. 10% is account mix, so lenders want to see revolving credit, installments, loans, and trade lines. Again, if you don't have a credit mix, it's not very heavily weighed. However, they would like to see that you have different relationships, not just from one bank or one lender. And 10% is new credit. So too many new accounts in short period of times signals desperation. Space out your application so it doesn't look like you're in trouble. Banks will see this and lenders will see this as a red flag. Now, I mentioned earlier that there are times in where people come into the bank as business owners and they end up not applying because maybe the lender requires to be at least 2 years in business, at least $10,000 in revenue, sometimes even 250,000. Maybe they don't have the 680 paydex scores, and then they're requiring also no recent judgments or liens. So those are some of the things that the banks are looking for. That's here at the bottom. And then, of course, no recent judgments or liens. I've actually seen that kill a deal in the past for owing, IRS or having a lien on there for maybe $25,000. Then that means you may not be able to go to the bank. You may have to go to a different lender. Now, you may be asking yourself, well, if a different lender is going to give me this loan anyway, why even start to go to the bank? When you go to the bank, you get the best available repayment terms. And not only that, but also the interest rate and also the best programs. So going to the bank will allow you to be able to get the best interest rates in the industry. Any questions so far? I don't see anything on the chat today. We have a fairly quiet class today. All right, so let's go over the 7 deadly sins of business credit. So the number one is mixing personal and business finances. So being able to separate, not being able to separate them, especially when you're going through some sort of audit or the bank needs some certain information, it's like they'll want to see that information all under the business. Now, talk to your accountant being able to transfer how the best way to being able to transfer between your accounts, whether that's payroll, a transfer, a wire, or how they might be able to guide you to be able to, let's just say, send money to your personal account. Applying with inconsistent information. So using your different names, different addresses for each application, phone numbers, those are all going to trigger some red flags and additional verification. So try to always keep it consistent on how you're running your personal and your business credit, because the minute that you don't do that the way that you do it, usually it'll become a red flag to the lender and they'll just require more information. So on here, try to keep it consistent the way that you spell your name. So if you spell out your whole middle name, making sure that you're spelling out your middle name and everything, making sure you're staying consistent with your address, phone number, your EIN is exactly on what it should be connected with the Secretary of State and your filings. And then, of course, your Dun and Bradstreet and your credit applications for all of them to stay consistent. If they don't stay consistent, this could actually mess up your credit application. How do you get a virtual address? So Lawrence, they have different co-shared spaces. I know Taylor Space is one, and where you can go and pay a monthly fee to be able to get a virtual address. So they'll allow you to use that address. And then also, if you need to meet somebody there, they'll give you an allowance of you can use the office, you come into the office and meet a client once a month or whatever that case is. Or also, I believe UPS might have virtual addresses, but my go-to to go figure that out to see what's near you, Lawrence, would probably be either like a AI app. So what's, a good recommended virtual office near me? Or if you go on Google, you can, maybe or Yelp or Google. Google is kind of what's more popular right now. Be able to check where you can get a virtual office. Could you zoom in more to the PowerPoint? We cannot read it. Oh, let me see. Is this any better? Yes, we could
Yeah,
act.
it's the same.
It is? Is this, does it look small?
Yeah.
Really? Yeah, let me check. That's weird. Hmm. I don't know why it's doing that. My apologies. Does it show two different PowerPoints or just one screen? Hmm. Yeah, it's not doing it for me. I'm doing it. Wow, that's interesting. Okay, let me see.
Yeah, so slide itself looks very small
Hmm.
today overall.
Okay, let me see if I could change screens. Let me stop sharing. Because it does help if you could see it. Okay, let me try a different screen, see if this works. All right. Is this better at all?
No, it looks same.
Okay, I apologize. I'll send this right after.
Yeah, so yeah, we can share.
Mhm.
So that case they can zoom it.
Okay, my apologies, everyone. I'm not sure why it's doing that. All right. So number three is going to be maxing out credit cards. So again, you want to try to stay below the 30% so that way you don't have high utilization. This is also a red flag for lenders when they see that you're over leveraging the credit and then you're also now asking for more credit. It doesn't really look good on your side, especially when you're trying to obtain a credit application. Now, if you have maxed out credit cards or maxed out debt, what you may want to do is you may want to consolidate, excuse me. So you may want to ask the lender, hey, you know what? I want to go ahead and consolidate onto one loan so I can pay this faster. That could be something where they can overlook it into where it doesn't consider a red flag, but you're being a little bit more proactive of being able to pay that debt off by creating just one loan with better terms. Number four, ignoring your business credit reports. And as I mentioned, I had a client that had $1 million line of credit with their supplier, and they weren't really billing them. They just knew that they had a revolving credit line with them. Well, when we went to go run their credit report, their personal credit report looked great. It was like 800 plus. But when we went to go run their business credit report, their supplier had constantly been reporting them to Dun and Bradstreet. And so they did not have any business credit. If anything, they had terrible business credit. And so because of that, had to talk to the suppliers, hey, why didn't you guys tell me? And they're like, well, it's part of your contract. So when you're signing and agreeing to these type of contracts, just make sure that you are aware of what you're getting yourself into because that was a huge surprise for my client because he had everything that the lender was looking for except for the business credit. So unfortunately, he had to go to a different lender with the higher interest rate. Skipping tier one, so jumping to credit cards before building trade lines means fewer approvals and lower limits. As I mentioned, this could change depending on what relationship you have with your bank. But skipping tier one, try to always have some sort of vendor or supplier that's going to help you. And these could be those smaller suppliers for maybe your office supplies that you might need. Closing old accounts. You don't understand. This is a huge, huge mistake that you can do. And I learned this actually pretty early on. I took a credit class actually before I was 18. And they said that that's one of the worst things that you could do because what happens is, let's just say that you've had this credit cards for last 10 years and then now you decide to close it. What happens is that those last 10 years go away, that you had that relationship with that bank. So those are going to be things that you don't want to do is close those old accounts because then you're getting rid of history that you have with this credit card. And then, of course, late payments. We went through the impact, the negative impact that it does for you when you're late. So very important that you have that relationship with your supplier or vendor, see if there's anything, negotiate any other terms. And maybe your clients are paying you a little bit later. So those are some things that you may want to take into account. If for those of you, especially that took the cash flow class with us, this is going to be something that you would want to delay your payments instead of being late. So try to renegotiate whatever contract you may have with that supplier or vendor. So let's talk about what now after today, right? What is it that you are first going to do if you don't have these in place? You're going to start with your foundation, which is going to be to set up an LLC or an S Corp if it's not already done. If you're not sure which one to go with, make sure that you're working with your accountant and you talk to them to see which is going to be the best type of LLC or S Corp, which one's going to be the best for you, especially starting off and based on your situation and industry. Also, get an EIN from irs.gov. It's free and instant in the event that you already don't have one. Why is that? Because with an EIN, just take it as a social security number for your business. So that's what it essentially is. And then that's what's going to help you. It's going to be kind of like your social security for your personal credit. It's going to be your EIN number for the business. Open a dedicated business bank account if you don't already have some. I can't stress enough how important this is, especially when it comes to audits. And also making sure that your EIN number is reporting. And not only that, but some banks, based on your EIN number, they may be able to provide some offers for you on being able to obtain a business credit card there. Register DUNS number at dnb.com. Set up a business phone number and address, and then apply for 3 to 5 tier 1 vendor accounts. So that's going to be your foundation to be able to get you started. After your 31 to 60 days, we want to start building. So we're going to confirm tier 1 accounts reporting. And remember, it does take about 30 days. So that's where you're going to want to confirm. Apply for 2 to 3 retail fleet accounts. Check Dun & Bradstreet and Experian reports. Those are going to be the ones that are going to be used the most, especially for lenders. Dispute any errors on the reports. As I mentioned, I gave you the example of a loan that we were unable to do because my client did not know that their vendor was reporting them negatively. Start using accounts and pay early. We mentioned that this is a way that you could actually start paying early and being able to boost up your credit score even more. Use your credit cards and try to pay them off on a monthly basis. So that way, 1, you're not getting into debt. 2, you could probably get some points depending on what credit card you have. And then 3, it also gives you the opportunity to delay your payables. Why would you want to delay your payables? It gives you a little bit of time for you to make that money back and being able to use the credit card appropriately. Open NAV accounts to track progress. And we'll give you the resources at the end of the slides and make sure that we get them over to you. And then day 61 to 60 is your scaling. So that's when we're going to apply for a business credit card, target anywhere from $10,000 to $25,000 on the credit limits. Begin building your relationship with your banker if you don't have one already. If you don't know any of them, I know plenty of them since I've been in the industry, depending on what area you're in. Request limit increases on active cards. This will help you reduce your utilization, especially as you start growing. Make sure that as you are growing your business, your credit limits are also growing, but also going to support your growth with you. Prepare financials for Tier 4 lending, and then, of course, set 6-month goal of $50,000 available credit. Not only, as that I mentioned earlier, it takes money to make money, but you could use these credit cards for your operating expenses, even your payroll, and continue to get some sort of money back on the rewards that they have to offer. The business credit funding stack. So this is kind of what we went through today. As you can see here, it starts with Tier 4. But earlier we went through Tier 1 all the way to 4, kind of hard to get you there. And we talked about being able to pay early, not just on time. Keep your utilization under 30% so that way your credit score stays healthy. 3 accounts per tier is what's recommended. 6 months per tier before moving up, and then monitor your reports monthly. Try not to skip a tier. There has been times in where a client does start with a credit card and an SBA lending here, and this usually can happen if you have a strong personal credit profile, but not only a strong personal credit profile, but also your finances also strong on that side as well. Those are some of the ways that you'd be able to kind of skip them out. Now I'm going to go ahead and open it up for questions, and I want you also ask yourself, if you haven't already, what's holding you back from building business credit? And feel free to ask me anything to kind of make you feel comfortable. Again, this is your foundation for your business. I myself, when I started my business, had a business credit card immediately. And which tier are you currently in, and what's your next step? And then have questions about a specific lender or account type. You got to remember, I do come from the finance world. I can probably answer most of your questions here. If not, I can definitely guide you to the right person that can. And it looks like, all right, we have some things in the chat. By the way, if you could see the QR code here, you could actually book a strategy session, a free discovery call with me or my team, and we would love to sit down with you and see how we might be able to help you. And we would send you a Zoom link so that we can go ahead and help you virtually. Okay, let's see. It says, how do you deal with accounts that have gone out of business and closed account? Ray, unfortunately, with those, there's things that we can and cannot control. So on those, we wouldn't be able to really do anything about it because the creditor is closing those accounts. So unfortunately, there's really nothing that we can do on that. So yeah, unfortunately, I wish I had a better answer for you. There are a few chambers of commerce which allow their members to use their chamber address as the business owner's business address. You just have to ask. That is very true. I did have a temporary office it's called the Bebop Center here in San Bernardino. And I still have it actually. They had a mailbox for me for a short period of time, and then I ended up changing it somewhere else. However, yes, check with your Chamber of Commerce, check with your resource centers, your business resource centers in the area. They typically may have virtual office. Good call out, Catherine. I appreciate that. And it says, often a credit union will give you a business checking account, but if you have to ask before you open the account. Okay. Thank you, Dyra, for putting that in there. Are the new SBA grocery loan and Made in American loans through the SBA, or do you apply to the bank lender for these new loans? You know what? There may be some lenders, there may be some banks that already may have it. However, if they don't, what you can do is you can go through sba.gov. And if your bank or lender of choice does not have that, it'll give you a list of lenders of where you can go for based on, let's just say you're a startup, or if you are looking for a specific loan, it'll tell you what lenders you can go through that are already approved with SBA. How do we access the business report without having to paying for NAV? You know what? From my understanding, child, there's typically a charge for it. I have not seen yet a service that doesn't charge when it comes to business credit. So it might be a little bit of an investment that you may have to do. But however, I have not researched lately on that. And then also you may want to check with your bank. Sometimes your bank will also do the credit monitoring for you because they have your EIN and all that information. So check with your bank. Okay, Ashley, it says I was also unemployed for a few months, so my personal credit took a hit with some late payments. Does that affect your business credit? Ashley, as long as it's not reporting to your EIN number, it shouldn't affect. And as long, of course, as you keep it separate and you're still continuing to pay your business debt on time, it should not affect your business credit. Great question. Jeannie, okay, you noticed that your American Express is not reporting. Can I do anything to have my history reported? Jeannie, actually, and I apologize if I'm not pronouncing that correctly, but from my understanding, they only report the bad, not the good. And so, but then I've had other American Express customers say, I called customer service and they are reporting. So I don't know if it really has to do with the type of credit card you might have. However, I do know for the longest time working at a bank, I would always recommend for them to have one of the bank's credit cards that I was working at that I knew reported to Dun and Bradstreet because unfortunately at the time or the type of credit card that they had was not reporting to American Express. But not only that, right? The annual fee is high up there. So unless you're not using all the perks, it might not be beneficial to you, especially for those that are trying to establish credit. Best thing to do would be call American Express directly to see what kind of guidance that they would give you. But based on my knowledge, I don't believe they do report. They only report the negative, as I mentioned. Is it possible to work with a coach on a one-on-one? Lawrence, yes, absolutely. So you have PACE as a resource, and then you have there's other business development centers that can do one-on-one coaching that are paid by cities or sponsors. So you may want to maybe connect with Irene. She might have some resources for you. Do you prefer particular vendors who report to the credit bureaus, Deluxe, Uline, or others? To be quite honest, Catherine, I don't have any preference for any of those. In fact, I actually, for me, I have a couple business credit cards and then a gas card. And I have Shell as my gas card. So, as far as the other vendors, I don't really have a recommendation. Of course, absolutely, Jeannie. Good luck and let us know if we can help with anything. Great questions. Thank you, everyone, for your participation. Are there any questions on the queue that I missed? Oh, there's two here. Is the Business Spark credit card a good thing? Dolene, I haven't heard of Business Spark. The easiest way, Dolene, is going to be give them a call directly and see if they report to credit bureaus, both the good and the bad. So that would be one. And then also, you could, if you have the disclosures, it should also be able to tell you on there. And then Catherine, I believe I already answered your on the chat. So it says, are the new SBA grocery loan and Made in America loans SBA, or do you apply the banker lender with these loans? So best way is to go to sba.gov and see what type of lenders can actually assist you with what you're looking for. Great questions, everyone. Thank you. Any other questions that you may have? Oh, is it Capital One? Lawrence, I mean, lenders are always going to like for you to have an office. However, it might not be feasible because of where you're at maybe you're starting off your business. Um, And it also really depends on your clientele. So I know for myself, I work a lot with the Hispanic community. So although my business could essentially be home based, I guess for that matter, I because of my type of clientele, I actually have an office out in Rancho Cucamonga just so that I'm able to cater to those that would like to do more in person. Especially because I'm dealing with their business, their financials, and there's a lot of AI nowadays. So maybe if you're not seeing me through Pace or a reliable source, they're going to want to make sure that I'm a person that exists, especially if they're just finding out through me about through my social media or the website. But I would say it would just be a matter of your preference and what your budget is for your business. At the end of the day, when you go to the bank and you have to issue those 1099s or whatever it may be, you may want to have something that's not your personal address. And yeah, Jolene, going back to if it is Capital One, I would just give them a call and see if they report to credit bureaus. And I have had some clients, even at banks, that they were like, Valerie, I don't like your credit card anymore. It's reporting to my personal for some reason. So just want to make sure that it's being kept separate. There are some smaller banks that don't do that. So just want to make sure that you're getting reported to both the business separately with the personal. Keep in mind when they do run credit, especially with these bigger lenders, they are going to run both your personal and the business credit. And if you don't have enough business credit, they're going to go heavily on your personal credit, especially if you have a relationship with them. It's a good way for you to start with getting a credit card. Thank you. Great questions. Anybody else? All right. Well, I wanted to finish off here with the 3 commitments before you leave today that you're going to try to check your business credit report within the next 48 hours. Apply for your first vendor account this week if you haven't already. If you're maybe in a different tier, then apply with those tiers. And that you're not going to use your personal credit for business expenses again, especially for, you know, for the purpose of you getting any type of loan in the future. And if you'd like to keep in touch, we'd love to. You can scan one of these QR codes so that we can continue keeping in touch. Thank you,
Okay.
Irene. Thank you,
Thank
everyone.
you for joining us. See you next time. Bye bye.
Bye, everyone.